of course. Why would it?
It's live.
Says live on my screen, buddy.
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay, I think we're live.
Yes.
Testing me. 1, 2, pinch me. Am I awake? Am I live? Yes, I am. Okay, we got thumbs up. We got a little bit of connection issues here, but we'll see how this goes. I am Joseph MoJOE McCarthy, and I'm thrilled to be here on screen live with my dear friends.
Well,
and
we
it's
lost
just
the
us
host.
now. He's coming back.
Joe's dear friends, Angelina, Kristina, and John.
Mm-hmm. Who will hopefully be meeting up once a week to talk leadership stuff, right?
Yeah, I'd like to get this locked in. I just need to get that ongoing block on my calendar and we'll be good to go.
Very true. Very true.
Hey, Joe's back.
Yeah.
Hey, I got booted out of my own broadcast.
Okay, well, here we go.
I don't know if it's going to hold here. All right. Maybe I'll walk and talk. We'll see what happens here. So those of the tuned in, welcome to the circus. And I am the ringmaster, Joseph MoJOE McCarthy. And I'm here with 3 of my favorite people, Christina Hawley, Angelina Frost, and John the Millenial, Weirauch, rhymes with eyebrow. And I would like each of you to take a moment to introduce yourself. Let the people know where you're broadcasting from, because I think that's really interesting. And a little bit about what brings you into this particular arena of talking about leadership and effective leadership. So let's start with.
Oh, it cut out.
Oop. I'll start.
Okay, John, go.
John Weirauch is my name, as you said, rhymes with eyebrow. I'm sitting here in Frankenmuth, Michigan, in the United States, which we do have to specify since we're in 3 different countries, I think, well, amongst the 4 of us. Very happy to talk. These topics are my passion. They are my life. We are all leaders. We all influence each other in one form or another. And so it's so important to constantly be focused on it. And I've got plenty more I could say, but let's leave it there and hop over to Angelina.
Hey, I am Angelina Frost, coming to you live from Buenos Aires, Argentina. And Buenos Aires. And leadership has been on my radar since the late 2000s, when I started working for a company called Engage to facilitate their program called What's Your Tree? And What's Your Tree was about purpose. And their objective was to help people understand the connection between purpose and leadership, and really to illuminate in people's hearts and minds that all of us are leaders. And so this course was really about finding a way to kind of template an emerging paradigm for leadership, where we're talking more about how we are connected rather than stacked upon one another.
Love it.
Thanks.
Well, I guess
Christina.
It's my turn. Hi. Yeah, pass the baton. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. My name is Kristina Hawley. I'm the founder of Holle Consulting. I am a business consultant and a business coach. So I've been in HR for 25 plus years in multiple organizations, big and small. Which I love the variety of it, because when you're in HR, really all those skills are transferable. And when we talk about leadership per se, you don't need a position to be a leader, right? We're leaders in our life all the time. So there's just this fascination about having people understand how to show up and how leaders actually impact the larger impact of the culture, right? If you have the right people in play, you definitely are going to have the right leaders that are going to make decisions that are going to impact the greater culture. So today I'm really excited. Oh, and I didn't get to, I'm in Canada, very close to Toronto. Yes, I'm just excited to be here, because I think that these conversations need to happen. And also I think that we don't talk about leadership as much as we should. I know some people would argue differently, but I think when we get into the motion of work and productivity and results, what we need to understand is that leadership is a huge component of that. If you want a highly productive workforce, you need the right people in place. So I will pause there. Thank you. Pass it to Mojo. Oh, can you hear us?
I don't know if we have.
I don't know what you guys are hearing, but all I'm getting is Matrix voices.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Hey, you know what's funny, Christina, is Joe and I are both in the United States, but I think you and I are much closer to each other than I am over to Joe in California. So,
Oh, yeah, that's very true, right? It's just
howdy,
like
neighbor. Yeah.
it's just a car ride away. I could
It
get
really
there.
is. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
only like an hour from the bridge, maybe an
Yeah.
hour and a half, and then that's another just few hours over to you. So
Yeah,
it's a
see?
lot faster than I could get to California. I'll tell you that much.
Well, and I think it's so interesting, like the whole leadership thing is, and like I said, it's transferable. We're talking in different parts of the country, the world, and we're all talking about how to show up better and be a leader and all that stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, so let's hop in there since Joe's having some struggles there. He
Mm-hmm.
said he was going to lean on me to start just because I don't have as much time as you all today.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but just to hop on to start a couple things, hopping on some of what you both had said. One thing that I've really been focusing on lately is trying to explain the transferability of the knowledge you can gain. I mean, yes, Christina, you were hammering on, business, workplace, leadership. It's so important. We don't talk about it enough. I don't think we talk about enough how that is transferable to your personal relationships, how it is you in regards to your family, in regards to your friends, in regards to your, either immediate family, siblings, whatever the case may be, because we are constantly influencing each other no matter what we do. And I think what I've found, and this might be my own thing, but I for the longest time I pigeonholed myself saying I'm developing my workplace leadership, and I'm developing that, and I'm going to become a great leader of this team here. And yeah, I've poured so much energy into that. It's all of a sudden like, well, wait a second, where are my priorities in life? And if I think about my priorities, my career is actually maybe 3 or 4 in all of that. And so it's taking that knowledge and really, really implementing it within my own family as I'm leading, being a leader for my wife and for my children and for, different groups, and even my parents, my siblings, things like that. And then to go into that same vein, how that is, something we can latch onto to find purpose and meaning. Mojo wanted to talk about things like the Great Resignation and quiet quitting, and I think that is the gap that we're seeing. Okay, we've got a crisis here. As far as I'm concerned, we've got a rise of emotional issues, of mental health issues. We've got a rise of suicides, drug overdoses. We have all of this not great stuff happening. And if we could redirect, and you can even look up the science of addiction and how many people get over it, having something meaningful, having something purposeful, having something to fill the void that you're otherwise trying to fill with other substances or other behaviors. And that to me is the place of work. And let me expand on that a minute before I carry this long on sentence for too long. But there's this group that I'm a part of. It's called Conscious Capitalism, and I was just talking to a friend and mentor of mine, and he goes, "We've got the period in the wrong place on capitalism. We have defined capitalism as like the production of goods and services for profit, period." And that could be really abused. That could really lead to, again, coating shareholders' pockets, coating CEOs' pockets, and leaving the employees by the wayside. Well, we need to expand that sentence. Capitalism is the creation of products and services and for profit for the betterment of others, for the betterment of society. Society needs to learn and grow and be innovative, and business is the place to do that. And to steal the purpose statement from conscious capitalism, it is to elevate humanity through business, through the workplace. Now, if you think about it, when we're 100 years old, looking back on our lives, we spend 40 to 50 hours a week at least working. We spend 40 to 50 years of our lives working. So when we're 100 years old looking back on our lives, a great portion of how we view our lives and our sense of peace, our sense of satisfaction, our sense of worth is going to be where we're spending the majority of our time. It's at work. And if we want to see true societal changes, we need to do it where everyone's spending the majority of their time, which is at work. But the problem is, it's like we've got this view. You know, I was talking to a young millennial. I call myself like the grandfather of millennials. I was talking to a young millennial recently. I'm on the older side, and I explained to her what I do, and I started talking about quiet quitting, and the response was, "Yeah, isn't that great? Isn't that cool that people are really trying to disengage at work so they can just get a paycheck and not have to put their heart." I know, and I was like flabbergasted. I'm like, I don't know how to respond to that. Like, no, I don't think that is great. You're spending so much time. Do you really just want to go through the motions and have no passion or purpose in what you do? So I think that, you know, in terms of this quiet quitting of collecting a paycheck, doing the bare minimum to not get fired, I think it's part of it. Or people that aren't even going to work, and they're, you know, there are places to find purpose and meaning outside of work. I'm not saying there aren't, but for the vast majority of us, we need to make a paycheck to live, to support everybody. And we need to, if we're going to spend that much time, we need to find a way to recognize the need for business and recognize the need. I mean, you know, one last thing I'll say before I pass it back to you all. I was talking to someone in I was being interviewed recently, and he said, he was just naming off different jobs. He goes, man, even if you install garage doors, you know, you've got a purpose. And it literally reminded me, just a few months ago, my garage door went out. I had to have a new one come in. The guy came in. I was stressed out. I was having a day. My little one is not sleeping through the night, like just having a rough time. And he comes in, has the biggest smile, gives me the biggest handshake, and just starts talking to me about my life. And I'm like, he literally lifted my spirits. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to find this like perfect job and perfect purpose. I think our purpose and our meaning and our significance can be found in building relationships with others and being a positive influence on others.
This is
So John,
awesome.
yeah,
So
beautiful. Can you guys hear me now? Can you hear
Yeah.
me now?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So fabulous. Thanks for taking that ball and running with it, John. I knew you would bring it home, as you always do. But I may have missed this, John, but did you give the Confucius quote that you often use in this particular context? Have you shared that?
I did, and I didn't give him credit, but it is,
Okay.
you know, more or less, if you want to see true societal change, those changes have to take place where you spend most of your time, and where we spend most of our time is at work.
So I just want to point out that that's not something that John the Millennial came up with. That's from Confucius, right? Which is considered one of the great minds of all time. Now, I know you guys well enough to know that any one of you could talk for the rest of the remaining time about what has just been set up by John. So fabulous. But I want to flip the perspective a little bit before we move on. And I know, Angelina, you've got a response to John, and that's totally good. But in that, after you give your response, I would like us to flip the switch to the perspective of the leader who is in charge of the group of people who are feeling like, isn't it great, this quiet quitting thing? And we'll get there. But Angelina, give your response, and then we'll transition to the leader perspective. Go ahead.
Well, I want to riff on what John is pointing out, which is that this conscious capitalism thing, you know, back in the, again, probably like late 2000s, mid 2000s, this concept of triple bottom line came into the collective think. And it was also around there that an organization called B Labs came onto the scene and started creating a vetting process for companies to make themselves into what are referred to as B Corps. They're LLCs, but they're LLCs who are living in service to like some higher standard for how capitalism exists in our world. And I also love the point that you talked about your garage door guy, because purpose is it's an expression of love. It's an expression of life through us, and it doesn't matter where we are.
Right.
Purpose is always expressing itself through us. However, if we're not anchored into what it even is, or have a way to see it or recognize it as it's expressing itself through us, then we go through life with a sense of disconnection from purpose, even though it can't not be expressing itself through us, right? So it's really about recognition, and this is a part of the cultural conversation. The workplace is a really great place, since we spend so much time there, as John pointed out, to catalyze this kind of conversation so that people can start to anchor into and recognize when they are expressing purpose in the tiniest little things, even if it's just, like changing the coffee filter, right? Or putting paper into the copy machine, without being, without that being a part of your job description. It's just a gesture. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to add to that really quickly.
Please do.
And
Yes.
then we'll go just very quickly.
No, please do.
I think it's more about the structure. The older structure needs to be reset. So with all these new changes, like it's not these things like mental health and all this has been there forever, right? Forever. It's just that it was very dismissive. Like people would be like, leave your problems at the door.
Right.
We don't want to hear from you. Doesn't matter. But now we're at a point where people can't anymore. So organizations need to learn how to reset their structure to allow for a different way of working. And that is, as you said, with the passion and, really recognizing different things and collaboration and like how we work together. That military structure that we've all grown up on, right? And it worked. But now the younger generations, and there's a shift where it's not going to work the same way. And it's really, the opportunity is to go in and kind of go, hey, like I just recently did a culture audit, and it's eye-opening because when you do that stuff, you can see people they're doing what they've always done. So they may not necessarily understand that there's such benefit to, hey, maybe we do a meditation, or we have a meditation room, or we have a quiet room or something like that, where people can just check out for a minute, recharge, and go back in. These are different ways of thinking, whereas before it was non-existent. And like the idea of emotional intelligence and learning how to manage that within a workplace, and it's not, now I'll switch it over, but it's not the organization's responsibility to manage emotions. The organization, their responsibility is to create the space so people can manage the emotions within the organization. That's the shift, right? So, and I think it directly links to, quiet quitting and great resignation, because people, they don't necessarily feel connected. So if you're not connected in, you're not going to have any sort of loyalty in the long run. So I'll pause there.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm so glad what you both added there. They're both beautiful. And it reminds me of what I wrote in my blog a few weeks ago, and that I've come to a conclusion that there are two vital, what I call the vitamin C's of life, whether you're at work, you're at home, wherever you are. And those C's are connections and contributions. I think if we make solid, meaningful connections, which is all about relationships, and we have a contribution, right? We feel like what we're doing matters. That's purpose. We've covered everything that the four of us have talked about already. Connections and contributions are meaningful. That fills us up with a sense of purpose for being alive, much less being at work. But now, to make the shift into the leadership perspective, I just want to call the elephant in the room is that there's many leaders that will listen to this first portion of our conversation and say, another kumbaya group, right? Oh yeah, they want to still hold hands and sing around the campfire, but that's not how work gets done. In fact, my friend Rick Olson, who is a mentor to John and I, both said, unfortunately, you bring this information up and someone will come back to you and say, well, yeah, that sounds great, but have you ever worked for a Fortune 50 company or a Fortune 500 company? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't, right? I know, but I'm saying that the feeling is, or the sentiment is, well, that doesn't really work in the real world. And what we're saying, the four of us is saying, this isn't just a nice idea. This is about re-engaging a workforce which will no longer do what my father did. My father would work the exact same job, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, because his purpose was to provide for his family. He didn't have to pull any meaning out of the work. He didn't care if he was cleaning toilets or farming or mechanic. That wasn't the purpose. His purpose was to provide for his family. And so he did it faithfully and joyfully, and he considered it a privilege to work, period. There was a place where he broke his back and thought he would never work again. So every day he could work after that, he took as a gift, right? But that's a different mindset than John and his generation behind him that are saying, if I'm going to spend 40 hours a week on average or more for 40 years, I want it to matter. I want it to mean something, not just a paycheck, right? And we can fight that and say, well, you just suck it up and do like my dad did. Or we can shift that direction and say, how does this benefit everybody, not just the individual employee, but the organization, the team, the bottom line? And we haven't got to this yet, but I know there's great statistics that says this isn't just a feel-good story. This is actually, it increases productivity, it increases the bottom line, it increases profitability, and that's a great outcome. But I think the focus here, the shift that I'm feeling and sensing and trying to articulate is from the externals, whether it's the external rewards system, to the internal reward of feeling like purpose, or the external structure of command and control versus the internal, as Kristina said, I control my emotions or I don't, and I need to learn how as a leader, as an employee. All right.
Well,
so
can I just add one
Kristina.
thing? Yeah, I just
Kristina,
want to.
let me hop in because I got to log off in like 2 seconds.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. But yeah, the one thing, it's almost like we're all talking about it, and you hear a lot of people talking about, and I don't know if this term is coined, but it's like a mindfulness movement. We're moving towards this mindfulness, this caring approach to organizations. And I think to shift what Mojo wanted to talk about, like the perspective of the supervisor, the manager that's supposed to live this out and carry it out. Well, number one, when you create engagement, you will see more productivity, you will see more profitability. So let's just get that kumbaya stuff out of our heads. There's hardline bottom impacts of this. But to move past that, it's like, well, how do I do that when my organization might not support that? How do I live and breathe that if my organization isn't supporting that? And I think part of it is you can have your own mindset shift. Just a shift of mindset saying, I'm not here going through the motions. It's not like, oh, well, I'm so glad I got promoted to be a manager several years ago. And yes, I'm really good at keeping my team on track and hitting their productivity goals. And that's all my really job is, because that's anyone holds me accountable to. Well, maybe hold yourself accountable to something a little bit greater and realize the impact you have on, you see these people so much. And yes, you don't need a title to be a leader. Yet you do not need a title to influence others. But when you do have that title, you do have this greater responsibility, because you could create a very toxic place. You could create a very peaceful, inspiring place. And so I think an individual mindset change, understanding the impact you have and the ability to influence others and literally make their life a living hell or a living heaven. And you can do that in that position. You don't need any support from upper management. You can do that that mindset shift all on your own.
So can I add? Because
of course,
it's really about,
please do,
what you value, right? As an organization, what do you value? So this is not a bash fest on the way that it used to be. It's about an evolution, and that there's a shift and things are changing, right? So a lot of us were a part of that, and we understand how hard it was to kind of work, and that's the way we did it. But the evolution, this is what we need to shift what is valued within organizations. And when we understand that, if it's human beings and we are going to value that and we're going to invest, then you are going to have a shift, right? The shift is going to be about wellness, but wellness, not like a checkbox exercise. It's like wellness. How do we create that space where there is wellness and people feel invested and they're excited to be here? I think that, I think everyone's intention, I'm an optimist, right? So I think everyone's intention is good, right? But they get lost in the motion of driving the business, got to get results. They have KPIs, they have things that they have to hit, that they lose that sight. But if the organization values that and rewards and recognizes that is important, then you will start to see a shift in how people's structure is operating.
Yes.
The question that I think is kind of like the pink elephant in the room or whatever is that because the workforce, the mindset, the values of the emerging workforce is different than that of us and those who preceded us, we have to ask these people of the Fortune 500 companies if they want to remain Fortune 500 companies. Because they are not going to get to continue to be that in the absence of a workforce that is enrolled, right?
Yes.
If you've got a bunch of quiet quitters, you're slowly driving your own
demise
into really.
And you think about Google, you think about some of these progressive companies, they're
Apple.
definitely stepping out of the box from the typical old way.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's, okay.
Sorry, Angelina, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to finish my thought. So there is a way for a bridge to occur, right? And it does start with the individual leader, as John was pointing out, the mindset of that individual, because he is directly connecting with his team. And that right there, if he in his own desire to have more satisfaction for himself personally and drive those KPIs and drive those things in a way that takes less, that causes less friction. Because if he's creating a container of connection and collaboration for his team, he's going to see that he gets a lot more quickly to his numbers with a lot less friction, right? And that right there is something that is undeniable, right? As an individual. And that's how it starts, like a little acorn seed.
Yeah, very good.
Agreed.
Go ahead, Christina.
No, I find it's such a great conversation, right? It's like, we're really talking about the evolution. And, I think Angelina and myself, like, we've written books, we've connected with the idea that this is an inside job. So I think the part that gets kind of frustrating, because I know throughout my career, people would always be like, Christina, make me a leader. What do I need to be a leader? How do I do that? And it's like, what do you value? Let's go back to the value thing. Who are you? Right? And how are you showing up as a leader? With like your cares, your needs, your wants, whatever. Right?
Already.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go deeper and you can that's how you have leaders that inspire and motivate. All the greats they're connected with themselves. They're not looking for a script to tell them how to show up to be a leader. They're showing up as themselves and some. And that's what we need in organizations. So yeah, that was a sidebar, but
that weaves right into the vitamin C's I was talking about. So the connection piece, if it's connections and contributions, was what I think is essential. So the connections is relationships, but it starts with my connection to me, as you just said. If I don't understand why this is important, if I don't believe that it's important, then I certainly am not going to change my behaviors just because somebody said it's a good idea, right? So any shift begins from within to without, not vice versa. In fact, as you said with the Fortune 500 companies, the word that came to mind is it's unsustainable. There is an evolution happening, so you can keep doing the same old thing because it worked, but it won't continue to work, so it's not sustainable. That's the same thing on the internal individual level. I can keep doing the same thing I've always done, but I won't get the same results, right? There's actually a bit of an insanity built into that equation because in that context, it worked. The context has shifted. If I try to put the same content in a different context, now there's a disconnect. There's a disconnection, and it starts with friction, and then it becomes, the whole system breaks down. And so it's really important, I think, as Brendan Burchard often points out, that really the two things we want to generate as a leader to start with is enthusiasm and trust. If we can generate enthusiasm and we can cultivate trust, everything else will flow out of that connection, right? The contributions of our employees and actually our contribution to their lives will flow out of the enthusiasm and trust because that's part of our connections. But again, this goes back to the old Henry Ford saying that if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So this is a belief system shift that must happen inside of each leader, or they will never adopt this. They might go through the motions, but that actually won't be effective because it's not a true connection. It's not a true contribution.
And a connection that would be helpful for them to make. Because one of the things that I notice across the board with every executive that I've ever gotten the opportunity to work with, one of the things that inevitably winds up coming into the conversation is their level of dissatisfaction with the experience of their lives.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
At work, they're like, I've checked all these boxes. I've jumped through all of the hoops. I'm doing all of the right things, and yet. Right. And so when we kind of help them to understand that anchoring into a sense of purpose for themselves and creating a context where this is valued for the people that they are leading and serving,
Yes.
right, will make it so that their experience of satisfaction and fulfillment from their work will rapidly increase. And this is the piece that makes it like an easier quote unquote sell. And yes, of course, it is a divergence from the path, especially if you're in, you know, your middle ages, 45 and up. You're going to be more kind of imprinted with where we're coming from. However, our young people, the people that you're leading, leaders, they've got a different template. They've got a different set of values that they are operating from, and their lives really matter to them. And so does yours.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
You know?
And I would say that back to the topic of quiet quitting, poor leadership is one reason why people will leave. Right. So
it's the number one reason. It's the number one reason.
Yeah. Bad bosses, right? People
Yeah.
don't leave the job, they leave a bad boss.
Right.
But I want to touch on that, right? When we were talking about conscious capitalism, this is critical because we're asking people to tap into who they are, right? In order to lead and inspire and motivate on a whole different level. That is what's going to capture not capture, maybe capture is not the right word, inspire your team to want to work. Like, wouldn't you want to be working with people that are like charismatic and they care and they're high energy and like just really great vibes that are coming from them? But those are people that have checked in with themselves, right? They're not trying to be ego-led, which is a whole other discussion, which we can have a discussion around ego-led structures and all that stuff. This is like, we're trying to at least bring things to consciousness where people can be aware, like, oh, okay, maybe I need to do a little bit of work in my leadership style. Maybe that's about me, not about the organization. Maybe it's me, not about my team, right? So it's like, it's interesting. So if you're not a strong leader, people could be just sitting there quietly and not really wanting to be there. Now, I will say this, and then I'll pass the baton. Quiet quitting for me is the most dangerous one, because at least the Great Resignation, or when people are vocal, it gives you an opportunity to navigate, maybe fix some things, and you're moving things along. But if people are not speaking in your organization, somebody is filling that void for them, and it's not going to be good. So we need leaders to be able to step ahead and be strong and kind of address things head on and have integrity. So I say like the 3 T's, right? So one is we got to talk, we got to trust, right? We got to talk, and we got to have truth. That's it, right? When we're communicating with our people. So just to make sure that things get bubbled up and they're not hidden.
Yeah, so good. So the talk piece is so important. Just the same, and as we talked about last week, an organization is really an organism. It's built up of human beings. So just seeing that mind shift is really important. But the same is true for the individual as is true for the organism as a whole. If I'm sick, then it flows through the whole office, right? And so I have to start by addressing my own mindset, my own shift, my own belief system, all that kind of stuff. But I love what you're talking about is this the T of trust, right? Because nobody's going to talk if they don't trust that what they say is going to be honored, heard, not used against them, right? So in developing a culture of trust where you can say anything that you feel in a respectful tone, and you're not going to be reprimanded or held back or not promoted or whatever, right? But actually going to be celebrated, and you know that would be a great. We would be grateful for that contribution, but it has to be modeled, right? Because I got to tell you, I got bosses who say servant leadership every third sentence, but their actions are incongruent with their mouth. So they have bought in that, yes, servant leadership is the most effective type of leadership, and I'm going to teach you about servant leadership, and you should be a servant leader, but I'm going to do the same old thing I've always done because that's all I know. And so I say this not as a judgment, but as a compassion piece, because I know that we only can give what we've received. So I'm so interested in how do we help a generation in their 40s and 50s who inherited the system, as Angelina talked about, and they've been imprinted that way, and they see that, yes, compassion and empathy are actually a better way to lead, but I don't have a model for that. I don't know how that works, right? So how do we help people in that transition who are caught between two worlds?
I've got all kinds of
I know,
answers for
I know.
that.
Okay, you go first. You go first.
Angelina, yes, Angelina first.
Okay.
So it's this really, first of all, there's got to be acknowledgement that there is a problem. There's got to be desire to have it be different, right?
Sure.
Because it's not like we're going to just like scoop all these people up and be like, okay, you guys, we're going to fix you now, right?
Right.
It's not.
Yeah.
But once it's acknowledged to like, wow, I'm missing some pieces. I want to have a different experience, but I don't know how to get there. Right? That it's like, it's some training, and it's not even training that is built out of like, hey, I'm going to teach you something. It's more like creating a context where some deep inquiry can occur. And
Inquiry.
Results, yes,
I love
absolutely.
that word. Yes.
And once that happens, like the course that I facilitated was a process of inquiry that yielded the gathering of a bunch of data, right? And we were asking each individual to look at their lives through different lenses over the course of like 8 or 12 weeks. I don't know what it was. And it doesn't have to take that long. It could happen in a weekend, right? But it's this gathering of data. And once all of this data is in place, the individual who just gathered this data gets to look at themselves in a way that they never have before. And when they do, what they will see are some golden threads going through their story. And in this, they will recognize, purpose has always been here, right? There will be an opportunity for this kind of like, and it doesn't hurt, right? We all are like really hungry and want to actually know about ourselves. We want to talk about ourselves. We want to be seen, right?
Well,
we want to be witnessed. And so,
Yes.
I'm going to jump in because that's why I wrote my book, right? That changed my life.
Share the title.
Completely.
Share the title again, Christina.
The Authentic You, Unleash Your Leadership Potential.
Yes.
Okay. It was like I was dying inside. I felt like that there's more. And then once I started going on this explore, so the book, right, which I have workshops and all that stuff, and now I'm doing deeper retreats, like that personal development stuff. But the work, the book is really about the first step of like, okay, how do I look at myself? How do I start doing shadow work? What does this exactly mean? Why am I always doing this? Why am I always triggered when I get dismissed in a meeting? Why am I always getting triggered when, I feel like I'm not included in a meeting? That is all deeper work about the individual, right? So the authentic you, right? People misunderstand authenticity sometimes. Some people think authenticity, you can go in and just blast and kind of say, I'm being authentic and beep, 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 beep. And I'm like, no,
like it's
that's
a
not
hat
right.
that
like,
you put on. I got on my authentic hat.
It's none of that. Okay.
Badge of honor. Look,
right?
I got the A. I'm authentic.
Authenticity is being able to step into your own personal truth. So you no longer get triggered in those situations. So you can elevate and show up as the leader that you were meant to be. Now, I think that is the bridge point. Okay. I think the younger generation is much more open about how they feel about things. Whereas our generation in the militant structure, it was suck it up. You don't want to cry in a meeting. You don't want, I'm not saying that people are going to cry in meetings, right? But there is a toughness, especially also from personal experience, being a female in business. I was always the only girl, right? So I had to be extra tough to show up there. But and when you realize that, this is the peeling back of the armor and kind of figuring it out, that leaders don't need that. You need to be 100% yourself and learn how to manage those emotions so that it's a strength, not a weakness. So I think it's like, there's definitely a piece there that I'm excited for people, right? As Angelina said, it's like, it's one of those things. Soon as you say, I'm going to be brave enough to take the step here. I'm going to go on a personal explore and see where I can go. Magic happens, right?
100%.
And then those are the leaders, the ones that are honest about themselves. Can you imagine how they're going to inspire others in that group? It's like a fire. It's like they just light other people up. Why would you want that in your organization?
Exactly. And this is how the economy, right? Business actually is really where this cultural shift, this systemic shift that we all perceive the need for, this is why it's in this venue, because the economy and business, all of it touches every single aspect of all of our lives. Right?
Agreed.
So there is a really powerful opportunity for a courageous leader to really participate in the, without having to know how you're going to get there, because how you're going to get there is in here.
Inside job.
So I want to ground this in a personal story, and I'll give two actual stories without sharing names, and this just to help people understand these are not just great principles. This plays out in real life, and actually both Angelina and Kristina consult with people all the time. It's real time. We're talking
real
about
deal.
here.
Yeah,
It's the real deal. It's real
it's
impact.
the real deal. Yeah.
So my first job out of college was an internship with the president of the college that I had just graduated from. I took a year off of school. I traveled the world, and I came back happy and broke. And I told the president, "Hey, do you have any connections? You can lead me to a job. I don't even know what I want to do when I grow up, right?" And he said, "Hey, timing's perfect. I just created an internship. I don't have a person for it. If you're willing, I'll pay you to be an intern, and you can learn about college administration for a couple of years." And I was like, "Well, if I get to work with you, great, awesome." So this guy, the president of the college, takes me under his wing. He says, "Well, the first semester you're going to work directly for me." And within the first week, he had to go on a meeting somewhere, and he said, "Hey, I need a thank you letter for a donor. Would you write it for me?" I'm 22, 23 years old. I said, "You want me to write a letter for you, the president, to a donor?"
You're like, what?
Yeah, I said, I can, but please tell me you're going to read it before you send it, because I haven't done this before, right? But I got to tell you, the empowerment in that moment where the president says, "I'm going to be gone. I want you to sit at my desk and sit in my chair, and I'd like you to write letters on my behalf." I was there a week, right? I was like, okay, this is real, baby. This is real. And then for the next 2 years, this president would take me out to lunch at least twice a month. It wasn't scheduled. He'd just take me out to lunch, and we'd have to sit down over lunch, and he'd say, "Okay, what have you learned? What questions do you have? Okay, aside from business, what have you learned? What questions do you have about your life?" And he would mentor me almost like a father.
Yeah.
I was young and single, and so he'd ask about my dating life and what are you looking for in a spouse. And we talk about spirituality. We talk about everything. But the one thing that I will always love this guy for is when in these conversations, he once said, he said, "Joe, if I just exchange a paycheck to all of my employees for their time, I'm really just a pimp and they're my prostitutes." And this is a faith-based organization, so the language is like,
"Whoa, what kind of podcast is this?"
Right? Is anybody listening? Right? Oh, my ears, right? And I said, "Why do you say that, Wayne?" He says, "Well, just think, it's just a transaction of their time and effort for money." He said, I can't live with myself if that's the kind of leader I am." And this is way before emotional intelligence came out. This is way before all these conversations. He says, "It's my job as the leader of the organization to make sure that however long I have an employee under my authority, whether it's a direct report or all the way down to the bottom rung of the tiers, that when they leave this institution, they leave as a better person than they did when they came in." He said, "I don't have all the structures in place, but that is my intention." And I got to tell you, I've never forgotten that, right? It's I don't want to be a leader who is exchanging money for services, right? I don't want to be a pimp, right? For the prostitutes that work for me. And so that language, of course, stuck with me. But I think what the combination of him taking me out to lunch, asking about business, teaching me business, asking about my life, teaching about my life, basically mentoring, coaching me. That wasn't part of his job description nor mine. He's a super busy guy. He's responsible for everything that's going on in the institution. And he's become, one of my favorite people in the world for the rest of my life, right? But as a result, two things happened. One, super empowering. Like I was fully engaged. I didn't know what I was doing, but I'm doing it with all my might. Right? I'm doing it with all great gusto because this guy trusts me and he believes in me and all this great stuff. But however, it did set me up for a lifetime of disappointment, because when I left that institution, I assumed all other bosses had that same mentality, and turns out they don't. Every boss, for better or for worse. And so then I inherited one boss after another that had basically the command and control, and I'm impervious to, and I won't show any pain or fear, and I'm certainly not going to talk to you on a personal level, all those kind of things. And so little by little, my spirit kind of gets, okay, well, I guess I don't fit in here, I don't fit in there, and why aren't we doing what Wayne did, right? But all that to say, Wayne is now in his 70s. He was way ahead of his time in terms of the conversations that we're having here, but it was super effective. And as a result, he brought out the best in me as one of his employees. So I just want to throw that as a real life example. And it doesn't have to be just the shift because of the COVID and cultural and quiet quitting and the great resignation. This what we're talking about is the essence of humanity, connections and contributions.
Humanitarian effort. Yes, 100%. 100%.
All right, so let's ask for practical tips here. We don't have a ton of time left, about 15 minutes or so. So for those who are in this conversation, either live or will tune in after the fact, who are going, okay, I believe what you're saying is true, or at least I'm willing to experiment. I'm willing to ask, how does this work? Can we give some very practical next steps, just simple putting your foot into the water of what we're talking about so that people have a next step to take if they so choose?
Yeah.
Christina. Christina.
I'll jump in first.
Please.
So I'll just do a couple of signs that you should watch for if you are at risk. Okay. And I think it's important. So as a leader, things that usually trend around quiet quitting is that lack of job satisfaction. So if you're hearing like people on the team, I hate my job, no one appreciates me, all that stuff. Those are signs that you really should start getting ahead of that. If you have, another one would be lack of growth opportunities. So what happens sometimes, I think, with individuals is that they learn very quickly, or they may have thought. So there's a discrepancy, right? Like our older generation would be very much like, you put the time in, you keep going, you wait for them to acknowledge you, and then eventually, hopefully, you get a promotion, right? Whereas I think the younger generation, they learn quick. So if you don't have jobs that are potentially evolving, that can be pretty discouraging for them. So as an organization, maybe it's rethinking how you're looking at your roles. Like, do they evolve? Can they move to other roles? Can they cross train? There's like all these different options, but it's be creative. Okay. So there's that. Also, again, as leaders, poor leadership is definitely going to be a sign. So if you are hearing, like, it may not be your team, but if you're hearing around the water cooler per se, that, this person's a horrible leader, this is what's happened, those are red flags. Like you're kind of asking for trouble if you ask me. Also, I'm a big one, like I wrote about it in my book, about toxic energy. Okay. We don't talk about energy in workplaces, but I will tell you, energy is the most valuable commodity you have. So you're foolish if you don't think that's happening in organizations. When people leave you and you are exhausted, someone has drained your energy in that interaction. So if you are in a work environment, and you're noticing that your team is always drained, they're always tired, they're always complaining, red flag, guys. Like, that's stuff that you should probably looking a little bit closer. My concern, I'll pause there, but my concern is if they're not talking, you have to bring your A game as a leader to be able to see these cues before they even start to surface. So I will, yes.
Yep. One other very obvious red flag before I hand this off to Angelina is high turnover. Turnover.
That's what I was going to say.
High turnover is a super important sign. Not only is it super costly to an organization, but it generally means that you've got a lot of dissatisfaction among your group. And then you add that the accelerant of a generation now, the young generation, who has no long-term commitment or loyalty to any organization. If I get a better offer, if I think I can do this on my own and make more money, if I'm out, right?
I'm out.
So this makes it extremely important and highly valuable that if the turnover is high, then that is a red flag among the others that Christina just said. That a shift has to happen. If a shift doesn't happen, you just say goodbye to your workforce. Okay, Angelina, off to you.
Basically, yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to rip on that because that is, as you pointed out, Mojo, very costly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Huge money.
And it's not just in terms of money, but also, well, yeah, it wastes
Money too.
time. It's hard. It's
Yes.
hard to hit your KPIs when your team isn't there, or when you have to like put all this time and energy into onboarding somebody again,
Right.
and getting them up to speed so that they can perform the function. Okay.
So go to Angelina,
practical-
if you'd shift there, a step. Give us a step or two
Yeah,
that we can
practical
take.
tip. So as a leader, one thing that you find yourself in the position of having to do from time to time is basically deliver some kind of, we hear the phrase constructive criticism, right? And there's one really easy way to structure this for yourself so that you can do it and make it so that you and whoever it is that you are leading can win. And that is this very simple little formula for a question, or to structure the conversation. And you can lead with, what I see that is working is ... fill in the blank. And what I would like to see more of, and this is where we're actually delivering the criticism, is an improvement in ... What I'd like to see more of is ... And this way, they are getting recognized and seen before they're getting coached, really.
Yeah.
Right? Because as a leader, sometimes that is what is required, is you need to share with your team members how to improve their own form, right? And sometimes they can't see it, but you are in a position as a leader to see it. And so all you're doing is offering a suggestion for how they can improve their form. So what is working is, and what I'd like to see more of is. That's it.
Yeah.
That's what I got
Yeah.
today.
Very good. Kristina, you got something?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, I wrote an article about it, and it's true. It's like we're shifting from just one leader. It's kind of like you're shifting into more of a coaching role, right?
Yep.
So when we're working alongside people, no one wants to feel as though, like, if we were playing soccer and the coach just comes out and says, "No, you're doing it wrong," and like really embarrasses that person on the team.
Been there, done that.
It's not gonna, it's not gonna go over well, right?
Right,
So
totally.
There's a different level, a different threshold in how we communicate with people, right, on our team, right? There's a level of care and nurturing, like a coach would, like, hey, okay, the phrases that Angelina shared, they're not as harsh as
exactly
what has been in the past. So this is where that emotional intelligence, bringing your A game, being aware, like the one that I love to use, help me understand. Help me understand why did we go here? Help me understand, so it's less, why did you do it? To something much softer. And it helps with that overall flow. But yeah, it's a coaching, there's shifted into a coaching role.
And for the leader who would think that was just a little too kumbaya, right?
Yeah.
Think about this, leader. What do you want? Right? What are the results? What are your objectives?
Yeah.
Right? Because if what you want is for your team to follow your lead, give them something that they feel good about following so that they can.
Yeah.
Right?
And I just want to point out that both what Angelina shared and Kristina shared as this entry into this world were questions, right? Questions are the answer, people. I hear this from everybody, most famously Tony Robbins, who says this all the time. Questions are the answer. Why is that? It seems paradoxical, perhaps. Why is that? Because with a question, by nature, I'm suspending judgment. Now,
I love that.
I may have a conclusion already that I think I know what you're going to say, but the problem is if I don't ask the question, I will never really know what you think and what you feel, right? So at least I suspend my judgment. It doesn't mean I don't have a judgment. It just means I suspend my judgment to say, what are you thinking? How did we get here? let me understand the story that's going on inside your head. I get this from Brene Brown, she's saying the same thing, and she says this in the context of relationships. She says that her therapist actually taught her and her husband, when they get into this heated friction, negative energy field moments, to ask out loud each other, to start with saying, the story inside my head is playing out this way. What's the story inside your head? And it actually allows the person to express, here's what I'm seeing, thinking, feeling, and expecting, but let me see it from your eyes, right? Let me see it from your perspective. And she gives hilarious anecdotes, and I would highly recommend you look it up. But I'll say, from my own personal experience, this happened just less than a month ago. I was out at a golf tournament. I wasn't in charge of it, but I was serving on the team. I'm doing everything I can to make sure that all the players and the donors and all the awardees and everything, all that gets done. And I don't have an agenda. I'm just there to serve. But there was like 4 times at least, maybe 5 times throughout the day, where I would see a need and I would meet the need, and then I would get called out, and not just called out personally, but called out publicly. Why are you doing that? Nobody asked you to do that. Don't do that. I mean, and I'm pretty sensitive anyway.
Yeah.
But it was just like getting barked at. I felt like I was a dog.
Who is that guy?
Bad
Who
boy.
would do that?
Bad. Right. And I
So
was like,
awful.
so 2 things are going on inside of me. One is, what the heck? I didn't deserve that. But the other is, I don't really want to try anything again, because if I do something, even with all good intentions, I'm just going to get punished for it, right? I'm going to get humiliated, not just punished, humiliated for it. So I got to the end of the day, and my normal MO is just to brush it off, go to sleep, and say the next day is a new day. I don't want to make a big deal of it. But there was something inside of me that said, it's a new day, Joe. It's time to grow up just a little bit more. Like, do I have to mature? Come on, don't make me do this. So I sat down at my laptop and I wrote out an email to the one person in particular. And I didn't send it at first. I just wrote it all out, and I said, here's what happened today. Here's how it made me feel. I don't want to assume that I know why you did what you did, but I sure would like to understand it. Could we talk about it or something, right? Because here's what I'm feeling. And at first it was kind of awkward and kind of accusatory. And so I reworded it and took out all the language that felt like that he was to blame. And so I read it back to myself several times. And then I had that moment of truth. Am I going to press send on this email or not? Because that's not my style.
Right.
I certainly didn't want to make things worse, right? The last thing I want to do is, in fact, I had been coached many times, just keep your head down low, just stay out of trouble. And I'm like, I don't want to stir up any trouble, but I also don't want to live this way. And I don't want this to happen again. So in a courageous moment, I hit send and held my breath for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 hours overnight. And I get an email back and it says, hey, I got your email. Let's talk. I'm like, okay, is that good or bad? Right? I don't know. God, maybe I got myself in more trouble than I wanted. And I go into this meeting. At first, of course, there's tension. He feels like he's got to defend himself and I have to defend myself. But eventually we work through all of that, and the tension starts to dissipate. And then both of us said in non-accusatory terms, here's what happened, and here's what I thought was going on, and here's why I felt really badly. And the other person said, here's what's going on, here's what you did, and here's why I responded the way I did. So it turns out his intent was nothing like I assumed, and he certainly wasn't trying to humiliate me. He was just being efficient at his job, right? And by the end, which I didn't expect, and I'm so grateful for, we actually embraced, we hugged each other and said, hey, I respect you, I love you, and let's do better next time. Both of us said that. And I gotta tell you, I could break down into tears right now just talking about this, but all this to say that this is a real world. It's real world practical tips that it's so simple. It's as simple as asking questions, suspending judgment. And again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not saying you don't have a judgment. Most of you are in management or leadership because you have really good judgment, but you have to suspend that temporarily at least, and give the respect to the people who are working for you and the opportunity to say, here's what I was doing, here's why I was doing it. And then it's either a point of a teaching moment, hey, let's do it differently next time, or it's a moment of, wow, I had no idea, thank you so much for what you did. And it's a meeting of the minds. And I got to tell you, that one conversation has changed the atmosphere and the environment where I work. I can't overstate how powerful this is. All right, and we only got a couple minutes left, so
that was a powerful expression of leadership, Mojo. And I just want to high five you.
Having managerial courage. Yes.
Yeah, for just stepping up and you were being in your leadership by being a leader to yourself in your own life.
To myself,
and
yeah.
bringing that into your, because it was a workplace context thing, you had to bring it into work also. But I'm sure that it was a pressure release, not just for you and him, but in the whole container, because
Absolutely.
now he is also
Yes.
more aware.
Yep.
Yes. So I'm really happy that he had the grace, to meet you.
Yeah.
And in a graceful way. And yeah, that's really awesome.
So before we sign off, and I want each of you to tell the audience how they can connect with you offline, I just want to go back to the one word to me that's the thread that pulls all this together that we've talked about today, and that's trust. That if we can generate trust, if we can trust the people who work for us, if we can trust ourselves, if we can build the trust between them and us, and so just so people don't think, well, this is a nice idea of three people I never met, go to Stephen Covey Jr.'s book, The Speed of Trust, and he'll give case after case after case why trust is the single most important element in any relationship, especially in business. And actually, the speed of business is directly proportional with the speed of trust in the relationships. And that's just a hint at that book, but it documents what we're saying
That's awesome.
They can reach you
Cool.
and connect with you once this broadcast has ended. Oh,
Beautiful.
I lost you. Are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we lost you there for a second, Mojo.
How do people get a hold of you? Oh, you want me to go first? Okay. People, hey everyone out there, if you want to still stay connected,
Christina, yeah.
Join, well, I'm at hollyconsulting.com. You can join on LinkedIn, my company page. And then also for all those ladies out there, if you are listening, I'm really excited. I've started a female empowerment group, successful, authentic women. So
Awesome.
That's on Facebook, and we share some really powerful insights and whatnot. I would invite you to come and join. It just, yay, Angelina, come! I just want to make sure we're building community and we're expanding, and I love that. I want to create the space for us to do that. So yes, you can get me with all this corporate stuff on my handles. Okay.
Awesome. All right, Angelina.
Thanks.
Thank you, Christina.
AngelinaFrost.com.
Yeah.
Angelina at Angelina Frost. If you would like a copy of my book, Connection, I offer it as a gift, angelinafrost.com/gift. And it's super easy to get in touch with me through any one of those ways. And I look forward to hearing from you. And
John Weirauch had to bow out early due to other obligations, but he is well worth connecting with as well. And his last name is spelled Weirauch. It sounds like eyebrow, but it's spelled like Weirauch, which I have no idea where that's from.
Oh my God. Okay. All right.
And you can connect with me at the URL right there below my picture, mojoe.studio. It's a link tree. For those that haven't met me before, I've got a Substack blog. I have this particular podcast. I'm putting stuff out here and there and everywhere. And I just wanted to announce, well, I have a mastermind course that Angelina is going through, actually.
Yeah,
a mastermind course that I just launched. It's a seven module course, 7 pre-recorded videos. You can take it at your own pace. The cost is very low. Barrier of entry is very low. Use
22.
Yeah, use the promo code MoJOE50
Yeah,
and you get
I have
half
to
off.
do it. Yes.
It'll cost you $11.11, and that's like 2 drinks at Starbucks, maybe 1.5. And I just wanted to announce before we sign off that I just took all of my graphic design skills and I put them onto a print-on-demand store, and so you can get all of my graphic designs at bit.ly/mojoe merch, MoJoe There's over 500 items on it already and more to come.
Wow.
So lots of ways to connect. And for those of you that are shopping for Christmas early, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So on behalf of Angelina Frost, Christina Holle, John Weirauch, and Joseph MoJOE McCarthy, thank you so much for tuning in. It is always our intention that you get more out of this than you put in, but you've put in time, energy, and attention. So go invest that and bear fruit in your lives and your organizations. Until next time,
See you
Lead-
later.
lead
Okay,
well.
bye guys.
Bye. Bye now.